Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
Hey guys, First Responder Financial Freedom back here with Tyler, Mike, and me, Aaron. We are on mid-30s episodes, getting to 40. You guys have been sticking with us for a while, so thank you. We're going to try to get some more people on here that aren't as shy as some of the ones who've been BSing us about popping on. But thanks for hopping on. Today's just going to be us three chatting it up about what we got going on. Mike got his butt kicked at work and spent the whole day yesterday with the kids and the family at a baseball tournament. Tyler's going to try to take over the world. He's just showing us a shootout video from one of his clients' rentals in Tempe, Arizona. And I'm trying to import and export stuff from China and Japan before the world goes to shit. So
you better hurry up.
No, I'm fucking dragging. So it's funny. So yesterday I texted a buddy of mine whose dad does import and export. He lives down by DC. And I was like, hey, man, does your dad know about this? He goes, well, my dad mostly does guns and weapons. That's what he imports and exports. So I was like what? Like War Dogs, like the movie? And he's like, no, he's got some wild stories. He's like, but no, he can help you out and direct you. I was like, I just want to meet him now for the stories. Like I'm just going to call him and just like tell me everything.
I can only imagine the amount of bureaucracy and red tape that is around importing and exporting firearms.
Yeah. He was like, I can't remember. I think it was like Berettas and HKs and a couple other ones. He's got some interesting stories. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. When I was in Africa, I met a guy who did import and export in quotations, who was on the puddle jumper with me, the plane when I was flying around. And the stuff he told me was interesting. And I've met some guys who do it and make a lot of money. The only reason I'm looking at it is because I want to import some budget-friendly cars to sell. There's a guy who does them up in Baltimore, and he sells, I think, 5 a year, which is the maximum you can sell before you have to get a dealer's license. And then I need a new excavator, and I don't care if it's like the Harbor Freight version of an excavator. For what I would pay here, it's like a fifth or a sixth of what I would pay going to China to order it.
So I was just going to say, so like, what is the whole point of trying to import and export stuff? And it sounds like you're primarily looking to import, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to export anything. I mean, not now, but like for the tractors, we'll say, I can buy not a tractor. I sold my tractor for an excavator. I need to dig up and do some trench work. So for me to rent it, it's like $1,400 for a couple of days and then a dumpster. Whereas if I just bought it, I can buy one and have it imported. It's going to take like probably 2 or 3 months to get here, but I could buy it for $5,000. And that same machine or close to it, there's some differences. Obviously, like a 2-stage hydraulic pump versus a 1-stage, so it's a little more jittery. The tracks can extend out or in. There's a couple things you can do to make it more expensive, but like the same one, I just watched the auction go for, I think it was like $25,000 to $40,000 for the same size at auction and used. So I'm like, if I can just buy a junk one to dick around with and then turn around and sell it, I'll probably just do that when it gets here. Just use it for a year and then turn around and sell it for probably a profit. But
so not like a business that you want to do every single month, just a one-time thing?
No, so I'll keep it for my own personal use. For like, there's been times I had to dig out like trench lines for well and septic or power lines, and just having this bucket to do it would have saved me a lot of money.
I look at it as therapy.
It's relaxing to me. I like being on a tractor or a big.
I'm surprised it costs that much to rent it, because I can rent like a skid steer for like a couple $100. $1,400 seems pretty high.
Well, so there's like 3 rental companies: Sunbelt, United, and Beltsville near me. And the cheapest is $440 a day plus taxes plus delivery, and I probably need it for at least 2 days plus a dumpster, which is another $400. And then if anything comes back, like I got to dig out bamboo, which I've been talking about for a while. So if it comes back, I need to go rent it again to go through this whole process. So I'd rather just buy one and have it. And then if I don't need it anymore, then I'll probably just sell it for a profit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I'm looking at import and export and the cars. So anybody want to import cars from Japan? has to be at least 25 years old. I think the maximum engine size is 700 cc, and you can get historic tags. Every state's different. So if you want a gas-friendly, budget-friendly vehicle, I'm looking at getting these things imported for like $5,000. And the guys in Baltimore and the one in California by Tyler, they're selling them for like 7, 8, 10. The guy in Baltimore, he's also selling in Puerto Rico. He said they're selling for 10.5, which I think is crazy. But it's because of the market. It's so expensive right now to buy vehicles. You just import one and put historic tags on it.
I was just at a closing the other day, and the guy doing the closing told me he just did some sort of transaction for somebody that has car dealerships, and he said that the used car market and car market is about ready to get a significant bump in inventory due to basically people in default. So maybe as an early indicator, this guy's sitting there saying like, hey, we sold all these cars at top dollar the last couple of years, 2 years, we'll call it. And he, based on his statement, it would lead you to believe that there's a lot of them that are either in the early stages of default or ready to be repossessed. So who knows what that will do to that whole new and used car market. But yeah, you are definitely like one of the more interesting investors I know, like castles, lighthouses, importing excavators, building storage sheds out of a tree. I mean,
oh yeah, like that, like my little doors up there. That's
always something. I'm like, but yeah, man, that's something I know nothing about, and frankly, the thought of it like sounds overwhelming. Just because it's like I'm sure there's 700 forms and they have to be filled out in a certain order, and everything moves at a glacial pace when you deal with the government. So I can only imagine what that would look like. But I guess it's kind of, you said it up to 5, so it's kind of like the Dodd-Frank stuff. You can do less than. So like if you're just doing it as like a little bit of a side hustle. And I wasn't really following all those numbers. I don't know how much meat on the bone there really is, but who knows? You could have 4 or 5 of them little things and have your own little rental company, rent them things out. I've one of the guys I know that has a dump trailer business and dumpster business. I saw that he's renting out his dump trailers now, where before it was just him picking the stuff up and dumping it. So I don't know if that's just him being a little more advantageous with like what's going on out there, or if there is a little bit of a shift or a slowdown. So
if you want to compare it to like real estate terms, so you have a closing agent, so they handle all the paperwork. You get a broker that brokers the deal at the port, and it's the same thing. He handles all the paperwork. You just pay him to do the paperwork for you. So that's with less things on my plate to do.
I remember that episode of The Wire.
And it's out of Baltimore too.
I'm shocked. So, well, besides that, what else you guys got going on? Tyler,
talk about the shootout, bro. I want to hear all about this stuff.
I don't have a ton of information other than what I sent you, but yeah, there's a client that I have been working with just recently who owns a bunch of Airbnbs, and they had a shootout at one of his Airbnbs. It looks like you could see, and maybe it was across the street, but you just see bap, 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 bap. And it was like at 3 a.m. or something. So as a business owner, any one of us, you're like, you see that on TV, you're like, oh no, that's not good. So it was just interesting to see. I'm interested with the Airbnb model lately because I like Aaron added me to one of those Facebook groups, and I don't currently have any Airbnbs anymore. So I'm just watching it, and there's so many interesting things now that are starting to shake out. Like yesterday, they had this investor who owned a house in Los Angeles, and LA for the last 3 years has had a maximum of 120 days that you can rent your property out as an Airbnb, and before it's not allowed. So before, the most recent thing that I saw, I guess Airbnb had not married up local like legislation to where it would stop it. But this person's like, hey, look what I just got. And it's a hard stop. Airbnb said, you rented out 120 days, you're no longer allowed to list this property anymore. And they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? And of course, the internet being the internet, everybody wanted to tell this lady how stupid she was. Like, how do you not know this? But it is kind of true. And I was thinking about this yesterday. We always say, what is it? Fire, aim, ready, however you want to say it. And that's true for the most part. But I was thinking there's certain things that you have to know when you're getting into certain types of businesses. And for me, since Airbnb is very wild, wild west still, I feel like and you're on the borderline of a business / hospitality business and a rental property, you probably should know your local laws and regulations. So that was it. So I'm actually going to talk to him. I'll have a better update later on, but I just kind of wanted to see what was going on with him. And outside of that, I'm slow. Mortgages have slowed down because of the rates. Flips have.
What's rates right now?
Like I quoted out a VA borrower yesterday. They're at 6.375%, and then the conventional buyer I did last night is going to be at, or no, I'm sorry, FHA buyer is going to be at 6.99%. So conventional is going to be mid to high sevens right now, which is just crazy that we're talking about it. You know, in like recent events, that seems nuts. But I always go back to my old lock sheets and stuff like that, and look when I was first doing this, and I was doing deals at the exact same rates. So I just have to put everything in perspective and realize, hey, the market was moving then. And I specifically remember the last time the market took a downturn and then rates flipped again. The first loans we were doing, again, high sixes, and people were stoked to be doing high sixes. It was like shooting fish in a barrel, kind of the same way the last 2 years were, where it wasn't really, there was no like, oh, hey, I'm sorry, but you need 6.75. It's like, hey, I can get you 6.75. They're like, sweet, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
So that's been helping. I've been doing more private loans. I've actually been starting to broker private loans, which nothing closed yet, but I just.
What does that mean?
What's that?
What does that mean? Can you dive into
So
that?
I'm able to broker, like you said, Dodd-Frank, right? You can only do 5 loans before you need a broker's license. So I have my broker's license in California. And I have people who need money, specifically seconds, that they're very well positioned as far as assets go. They just don't have a lot of cash. So like, you know, I've had one of them was a $300,000 second that they were willing to do 12% on for 3 years. The other was a $500,000 one, and I'm not sure exactly what we'll get terms on for that. That one was a little bit higher, but it was because the first mortgage was a little bit higher. So I'm starting to look into that. I'm just trying to be very open to whatever, kind of like, you know, Aaron's looking at his stuff. Have you guys know who Aaron Mazzarello is?
I don't.
He was on Bigger Pockets a long time ago. He's in SoCal, super smart dude. He has a bunch of properties, but he posted this. It said patience can save you years of damage, and he's been investing forever. And so I'm trying to like take a tactical pause and kind of look like, where is the market leading me? What should I be focusing on? So that's pretty much it for me, man. I hired a virtual AM as far as I don't know if I talked about that last time, through a service, and I'm just waiting to finalize who that person is, and then I'll just start training them. And I feel like Boise's ripe to start ramping up.
So you got a virtual asset manager, acquisition.
Oh, good point. So virtual acquisitions manager. So they'll be closing people over the phone. I will still be handling all the marketing, advertising. It'll go into my lead system as far as my answering service if they're not able to pick up. But if they are able to pick up, they'll be answering the live calls, or they'll be outbound calling once we get email or text leads, and they'll be responsible to close the deal.
So Mike, you in the chat, you said you have 74 to 93% occupancy on your short-term portfolio. How do you find those numbers or figure out those numbers, or what spreadsheets are you using to figure that out?
Sure. So it's just one of the KPIs we track weekly. So depending on the platform, I'll use Airbnb as an example. You can actually go to the property and then the calendar, and then there's a bunch of different things when you go to hosting mode, and it'll just tell you what your occupancy is, what you've collected, how much you've collected in cleaning fees, and you can just break that down. And then, I mean, realistically, if you wanted to, it'd be real simple, and we do it by month. So it's a trailing KPI. However, you can sit there and say like, okay, there's 30 days in the month. It was rented for 15. I have a 50% occupancy. And so as far as how we track it, we just go based off of the Airbnb platform. And then it's real easy to kind of validate that like, hey, this is how many days it was occupied. This is how many days it was not occupied. So we do it month over month, because if you try and look week to week, it fluctuates just a little too much, I think, to really process the information. But if I can look at, hey, January, we were at 93%, and then February and March, we went down to 68, and then March and April, we bumped up to 90. You can kind of start to see the ebbs and flows of when you're the busiest and when you slow down. So just like the regular housing market, that, that it was always kind of, hey, after Thanksgiving to New Year's is kind of like real slow. You can kind of start to see those, at least your properties. Like if you're in a destination area with your Airbnbs, you might have a significantly different occupancy if you own a house in the Outer Banks in February than you would in June, July, and August. So that's all. It's pretty simple to get that information, but what you do with it kind of dictates, I think, a little bit, or I should say what you do with that information is more important than like where you get it. So
that leads to my next question with Tyler. So Mike, he knows his numbers. He can prove it for, his occupancy rate. So can he use that to get a debt service coverage ratio loan, a DSCR loan?
Yeah. So there are lenders now that are starting to allow it. And again, it's just going to be higher rates. So what they'll do is if you don't have it, they'll look at historical air DNA data if you don't have 12 months of rentals. So, I mean, either way you can get it done. It'll be a little bit more expensive. It's funny. I think people shy away from these DSCR loans because the rates are a little bit higher. But I just think that they serve a really good need, man. And like I'm getting close to like, why not do it? Especially with inflation, because that 9% really that brutal. If you're getting a 93% occupancy rate, like Mike knows his numbers, right? Back out his numbers. What's an acceptable mortgage payment, and don't focus on the rate as much because we know at some point they will go back down. And if it works, buy whatever you can right now. And then as long as it works at the current rate, not like pie in the sky stuff. Your upside is going to be better when rates drop. It could be 5 years, it could be 1 year, it could be 10 years. But you can use those numbers. Lenders are obviously starting to look for more opportunity, right? So whereas before they probably didn't want to do Airbnb stuff, that's a significant portion of their market right now. So they're going to start increasing their product offerings. My guess would be if rates don't go down soon, they're going to ease credit restrictions. They're going to do things because just like us, you need to change what you're doing in order to generate more business. So that'll be interesting to see what they do as far as that goes. I mean, for DSCR now, they have no ratios. So you don't even need to submit rental income. You just pay a higher rate and they'll lend it out, which is obviously interesting and a little sketchy. But
I got a question for you before we start transitioning to the fuel. So when somebody says like I have a 1 or a 1.2 DSCR rate, or not rate, a ratio, like what are they talking about with that?
So what you're going to do is you're going to take the monthly principal, interest, taxes, and insurance and stuff like that, right? And then you take the rent, and as long as that's a 1-to-1 ratio, then you're good. If it's below that, meaning lower than 1%, so like 0.75, 0.5%, the lender looks at that as being risky. If it's above 1%, like let's say 1.25, 1.5% of the rent, then of the income, then you're good, and that's a less risky loan. So 1-to-1 ratio is the easiest way to explain it, I think. And as long as you have that, you're golden. So again, we're talking about analyzing deals. If you are looking to analyze these deals and you are worried about financing in the long term, don't wait until after you have closed to figure this out. Figure out where you need to be. If you're using hard money, let's say, to where you close the deal, you rent it out, your number, your rent, you know what you need to be at 1-to-1, you close it, you have a refinance strategy after it's closed, you let it close, boom, you refinance into longer term debt, and then just repeat the process. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
Thoroughly.
Okay.
Good.
I've had some coffee this morning. It's nice that I can have some coffee again. It's been a long time.
There you go. So if your DSCR ratio is less than 1, would that indicate it's negative cash flow?
Negative, yeah, or pretty close to it. And like I said, they're just going to offset their risk by charging you more in rate. So it's and that would be somewhere where I'm guessing maybe you're borderline, Mike, and then they see a lot of equity in the home. So it's like, well, yeah, maybe break even or slightly negative, but this person has so much equity. Are they really going to forfeit this asset if they can't make the payments? And the answer would be no.
Yeah, most of the ones I've seen are like 1.2 is a pretty normal debt service coverage ratio.
For sure, like especially with the stuff that you're doing like, so when you go true commercial, which is where all this started, they want 1.25, they want 1.5. And the banks don't really vary. The commercial banks won't vary on that because they've been doing it for so long. They know that assets perform at those ratios. So why change it?
Sure. And a lot of people kind of get like, well, they want all this stuff and whatnot. And I've been the guy that said that also. But you can kind of look at it this way. It's like another set of eyes that's going to check the underwriting to make sure that the deal pencils out also.
100%. I mean, that's
So,
it's a free fact check, right? Like you have somebody thoroughly seasoned who's going to look at your deal, probably more conservative than any one of us, but they have to underwrite the deal. And if they say it's good, it's like, hey, okay, not only do I think this is a good deal, but the most conservative person in the deal thinks this is a good deal.
yeah. So we talked just briefly and we kind of like grazed over it, but we talked about a second. So for somebody listening, like I don't know of any bank that will sign a subordination agreement to take second position. All the banks I've ever dealt with or deal with, they're going to be in what's called first lien position, which basically if you have a mortgage and it's through Wells Fargo or Citi or whoever, they hold the mortgage on your home and they are in first lien position. You referenced a second. So basically what Tyler was saying is somebody has then come in and is in second lien position. And those are typically riskier, or I would say they're always riskier than first lien position. And that basically means if you were to default on your house, the bank is going to get paid first, and whoever's in second lien position will get paid whatever's left over. So they typically charge a lot higher interest rate. That's why you were saying like 12%, correct? Which is, it's one of those things like that's something where it's, most people are not going to want to go into second position. However, if they look at the deal and they say, hey, there's a ton of equity here. I'll go. Like if it's $1 million house and the first lien's 300 and they need another 200, but you're in second position. So you theoretically still have plenty of protection. You're going to charge a higher interest rate. So it's kind of just one of those ways, like how can you find the areas to be profitable and, like you said, do business in these changing times. And that's one of them. Right?
For sure. And this house was worth $3 million. It's in Newport Beach. He owes $1 million on it and he needs business capital. It's funny because it's like us and he's thinking, well, as long as that 12% pencils out for him, he doesn't care. And then it works for the investor. I mean, man, 12% guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but for 3 years, dude,
that's good money. You actually would be financially better off if he did default. You basically get a $3 million house.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of the guys that do seconds will do. Let's say you do default on your first, they will start making payments on the first.
So
then maybe they can negotiate on the first and then buy it and then take it over too. So yeah, because granted, some first position won't want to do that, but there's some second guys that will do it to pay to buy them time to negotiate it down.
Well, and banks aren't necessarily in the business of buying real estate. They don't want the asset. They want you to pay. So that's why somebody in first lien position would negotiate with a guy in second to get it off their books. But we could go deep down that rabbit hole. I just wanted to, in case anybody wasn't familiar with the second, I know a lot of these bacon eating freedom toters were automatically thinking gun rights, and I wanted to just kind of slide that into the mortgage world. But
Mike, you and I, we bank for one of our couple of our properties. We bank at the same credit union. So I actually just got the rates from that bank looking at another project the other day. So one of the things I do is I'll take a property and I'll put it into a commercial loan. And then that property is then in an LLC. So that comes off of my DTI. So the LLC carries the debt and I just work for the LLC, or I own the LLC, and it's a pass-through entity. So like if you want to free up your DTI, your debt to income ratio, you can put these properties into a commercial loan to free up your available money to purchase. So I just have this happen to be out already, and real estate secured first lien position, fixed rate, max LTV of 80%, so 80% loan to value ratio of the property. In a business loan, it's a 15-year term, scheduled out 30 years on an amortized schedule, at a balloon at 15% at a rate of 7. So it actually beats residential real estate rates or compares to them. And a commercial one is a 15-year on a 25-year schedule. It balloons at 15, so at 15 it'll change, and then that's at 8%. So just to free up your DTI, like those are two good options right there, to buy more properties if you're stretched thin with your available money right now.
You can I'm getting some feedback. I don't know what that is. Just the place you just mentioned where I just got a line of credit through them on a property that I own free and clear. And we got a line of credit, pulled money off that line of credit, and now we're funding a private money deal that's supposed to close Monday. So, and something that's kind of cool that happened is, so exactly, arbitraging. I borrowed it from the line of credit at 7. I'm charging 12, right? So I have a 5% spread, plus I'm charging 2 points. And the loan I want to say is for 215. So we put about 150 or 165,000 of our money into it. And then something that's cool, somebody from this group reached out to me, and long and short of it was like, how can I get in the game? And it was like, I have, some money I want to put to work. I didn't ask them. They just straight up reached out. So they now put a chunk of cash into this deal that's going to close Monday, and they're going to get a check every month for like $500 or $600 or 400 or whatever it was. So I thought that was pretty cool. Aaron turned me on to this place. This guy found us through this group, and then basically just connecting the dots, and the guy I'm loaning it to is somebody that I've wholesale deals to, but he's a broker, an agent, and his family owns a construction company. So it's like a pretty solid borrower that I've loaned to before. So it's kind of like one of them things like, hey, I'm trying not to flip much, and this is why I can still make money. I'm loaning on flips. I'm just not the one dealing with all the contractors and Home Depot and whatnot. So I thought that was kind of cool, like how a bunch of people can win with something just through a couple introductions and connections. So thank you, Aaron.
If you guys were starting, happy to help, bro. happy to be part of the team. If you guys are just starting off and you wanted to lend out money, like what would you do to find people to lend it to? Because obviously you get a lot of people who are first time like flippers or investors who are like, yeah, I'm good. And then you got to run their numbers like, nah, it's a waste of time. Like this doesn't pencil out. Like, how do you find somebody you trust with your money?
So the hardest thing to basically quantify, but we all know it, is I'm a real big on character. So like there's a couple guys I loaned to, and like honestly, I never asked for comps because frankly, I don't know that market that well, but I trust their character. That's not to say that we didn't go through some sort of underwriting, but character is very important to me because like I am. Everybody I think says this, but it's one of those, like, I think, the people that, like, even if that deal went south, they would find a way to make you whole, even if that meant selling another asset, or doing whatever. So character is really important to me, like competency, like making sure that they understand or at least have some understanding of this business. They didn't just listen to 2 podcasts and next thing you know, like there's a lot to be said for taking action, but I'm not all about just taking reckless action. So making sure that they have a little bit of competency and they're comfortable with like what this is going to entail. Because we've all had that conversation with somebody who is really excited about this and is really confident they're going to take over the world and be the next flipping king. And then you never hear from them again ever because, they met a little bit of resistance with their first deal or whatever. And then obviously making sure that you have they have some financial interest in it besides just, hey, this guy wrote him the check and now they're just doing whatever with it. So how do I find those people? A lot of it is referrals. Like I've loaned to people that I know Tyler's loaned to, and vice versa. And a lot of those are met through networks, like the mastermind group that I was in. A lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them. What I'm working on now is a lot of the people within my local network, because I run a local meetup. I know a lot of people that flip or are landlords in this area. So basically lending to them. And I like that model just because if things were to go south, I feel like we already conservatively underwrite. We use 65% ARV, just especially right now. If I had to take back one of these assets, I know this market, I feel like I could dispo it pretty easily. I could do, you know, like I said earlier, I was joking, but like some of these deals, the best thing that could happen for me is they default on the asset and I take it back. That's not what I want to do, just to be very clear. But like if I have to take it back, I feel like I can fix and then sell a asset that is at least in the 1 to 2 hour range that I'm in versus, you know, like I have a couple flips in down south and one over in Jersey right now that like if I had to basically take that back, I would basically be looking just to break even. And like because I would have to go then find somebody locally to help me through the process. And it would just be a real big pain in the butt. Whereas locally, I can lend on several more projects and feel comfortable that if I had to do something, we could fix it a lot faster and easier than if we had to go to a market that we don't have the network or the knowledge in. So,
How about you, Tyler? Like, how do you pick and choose who you want to lend to?
Same thing as Mike. Like it's funny because I'll text Mike, "Hey, have you lent to so and so before?" Yeah, and that's it. And then I have buddies in SoCal that I'll lend to too, and I'm leaning more towards that, like kind of where Florida invests, like in Riverside, San Bernardino counties, where the prices are more in line with what I can lend. But yeah, character is everything for me because the other stuff, I mean, like I can see the financials and it all comes down to when it's at some point somebody's not going to be able to perform on one of our notes, and like what are they going to do? And I was part of a local mastermind here a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking like, well, what would we say if the market does get really bad and we can't pay them off? And I'm thinking as a lender and as a flipper, I'm like, I would just have to have a real conversation. And then that's what I would want to see from my borrower. Like, oh, hey, you know what? The market stinks right now, or I underestimated this. I'm going to do whatever I can to get out of this. But character is huge for me. I also look at the asset, and the biggest thing for me on the asset is I underwrite it like a traditional deal, but I don't want it to be out of the ordinary. Like I had somebody that I had lent to before, but he wanted me to lend on a log cabin. And I'm like, dude, I'm not lending on a log cabin. Like, I don't know anything about it. I'm sure just by the sound of it, it feels like there could be a lot of problems, and it's a finite market, very small market. So I just try to stay in like a very cookie cutter type of box when I'm lending. And that's really how I do it. So it did make me think too, Aaron, for those that are looking into to private lending, and I know you are too, I was talking with a friend of mine who actually wanted me to help broker this deal, that Newport deal. He uses two services that are national that will write the notes and the deed of trust or the mortgage anywhere in the country, and they're applicable to those state laws. And I'm conservative, but he's even more conservative than me. So he's like, how are you doing your notes and your deed of trust? I'm like, dude, I'm just having the escrow office write it up, or the attorney's office in Jersey. He was like, no, you can't be doing that. You need to hide. He's like, the borrower should be paying for this. And he's like, that way, any state you're in, you're dialed in case they do default. You don't have to worry about this note or the deed of trust not being within the parameters for the state. And the beautiful part of this is when you're the bank, what happens? Who pays the bank's fees? We do as the borrowers, right? So you pass that fee on to your borrower. So now you have a note and a deed of trust, both of which secure the property. And when I'm saying note, mortgage note, you have it and it's the correct documentation. Because the biggest problem is you don't want to lend on a property and then have the note not be correct, have it not be recorded on the correct property, which is why title insurance is extremely important.
Yep. Lender title policy, absolutely.
Money on title insurance. I would highly recommend against that. Make sure your title insurance company is underwritten by one of the big three. It's Land America, First American, and Fidelity. Make sure you have a legit title policy, but that's on a little tangent. I just know, Aaron, I know you've been looking into it, and like when Mike said the arbitrage stuff, that's super interesting to me too. And I'm going to be doing. I own a couple properties in Boise. A couple of my rental properties are free and clear, and it's just like, well, why? I can arbitrage that money with a line of credit and be getting paid twice, and have my tenants pay my mortgage debt done that I've loaned out.
So what you're saying is, for all the people who score really low in the test, don't try to take Florida laws and make them work in New York.
100%. And I was thinking I was being smart, but like, oh, this is a local attorney's office or a local escrow office. More so the escrow office. Like, hey, this is an escrow office. It's local. They'll be able to give me the deed of trust and note. And he's like, dude, how do you know where they got that? And how do you know if it's legit? And that makes 2 good points. And I'm like, okay, well, I thought I was being super conservative, but this is where I need to tighten up. So I asked him, hey, text me the name of these companies so I can just start using them and pass those fees on to the buyer. And it's kind of like asking anybody anything in sales, right? You don't know until you do it. And there's no pushback. Like Aaron's like, hey, Tyler, I need $100,000 on this property. Okay, well, here's my rate, here's my points, and then I need a $1,000 documentation fee. You're not going to say no. That $1,000 better not kill the deal, or you're in more trouble than you need to worry about anyways.
And you should have access to some money to do your own deals too. So like a lot of the lenders I know, if you don't have skin in the game, they won't lend to you because they're not willing to take all the risk. They want you to have some skin in the game to take some of the risk as well. And I've seen this with just talking about arbitrage. When people are trying to do these rental arbitrages, they're trying to rent a hotel room out and then Airbnb it for somebody, but they're trying to do it through an LLC, and the LLC, if they close it, the hotel has no recourse. So a lot of hotels I've seen when people are trying to do this arbitrage stuff is they will deny you if you're in an LLC just because you don't have skin in the game. So that's where rental arbitrage is a little bit different than what we're talking about, though.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you guys want to talk about the direction you're going in with fuel? I think we mentioned in the comment section.
Yeah. So we've talked about on the show a lot. Like Tyler and I were in the same mastermind, and recently we just decided. My business partner Bill and I decided to kind of bow out of it, and it's absolutely not because of anything they did. Just we've been in there for probably 3 years, and the way our business is kind of going based on what we want to do, we're just kind of getting away from a little bit of that transactional model, even though we just sat here and talked about lending and how that's a transaction. That group was largely or is largely focused on the wholesaling and flipping model. That is not to say that there aren't people in that group and tons of value to gain out of that group in various other assets and basically facets of real estate, lending being one of them. But we have a finite amount of money to deploy towards like education. And we just felt it was a good time based on like the direction we're going with storage and, the potential of going towards some larger larger multifamily opportunities, that maybe taking those finite education dollars and redeploying them just to kind of get into some other groups and rooms or whatnot. So, So as of right now, I'm not in that group anymore, but I still have a ton of great relationships for it. Like I can still text Mike, the guy that runs it, and I feel confident that like anything I would need, he'd be able to help me out with, and vice versa. So I have nothing but good things to say with it. I just felt like it was time for a little bit of change of scenery, if you will, and just kind of stuff that aligned a little bit more with where we're going with our business, which is, like I just said, a little bit less of the transactional business model of wholesaling and flipping, and kind of that long-term legacy wealth building.
Yeah, and it shows that you guys have, I put that in the comments, like you guys have clarity though. So you guys obviously took an appraisal of your business, saw where you were, where you wanted to go. And Siren's text, sorry. And you guys made a good decision. I mean, like I think fuel is awesome, but you can't go to fuel specifically and spend all that money if you are looking at a totally different business model. It just doesn't make sense. And like you said, you have good relationships. You guys have invested and poured in a lot. Stupid dog.
Let's have him on the show.
Every time.
He's going crazy. But it's weird. Like I was bummed when I heard it, but I'm like, you know what? It makes sense. Like if you're looking to go somewhere else and we all have that finite cash position for education, go spend it somewhere else and grow. And who knows? Maybe you guys will end up venturing back at some point. Maybe you won't. But I think a lot of that is in the relationships you built. So it's like you got what you needed to go to fuel for, and now you're looking for something else, and you got to fill a different bucket, and that's what you guys have to do. I think it's a smart move. Like I said, I was bummed, but it definitely makes sense to me, and it shows that you guys are evolving and maturing in your business. And that's where everybody wants to go. Nobody wants to stay a house flipper for 20 years. I mean, maybe there's a couple. I highly doubt it. But the whole thing is wholesaling and flipping. We're looking to generate revenue to put into passive assets or and to grow. And before I forget, we don't have to talk about it now. I don't know if you guys saw Brian Shea's post yesterday. Did you guys see that?
No.
So he got one of his friends sent him a letter from one of the local municipalities that he had been a police officer for, and they are going to file bankruptcy. And because they are considered, I forget the wording, considered whatever, but part of the business, their pension is now at stake. And so, yeah. And, I know there's a lot of laws that say that can't and won't happen, but I've seen it here in California when my wife's grandfather, who worked for Vernon, who actually now LA County is taking over. Prior to this, they just had a hard change in their healthcare costs because, hey, this is getting too expensive. So they completely changed their healthcare. Like, hey, this is what you guys get. This is what you qualify for. And the dude's 80 years old. It's not like he can go and supplement that anywhere else now. Now he's in his 90s. So this was a while ago, but it's just interesting to see. And the reason I brought that up is you are setting up more passive income for the same reason we were doing it for the fire department. You're doing it now for your active flipping and wholesaling business. You're not always going to want to do that every single day, be an active participant in your business. And you guys are looking for more passive things.
Yeah. Two things before I forget them, because that definitely will happen, is one of the big takeaways. I know a lot of people on the show and group know I did that fundraiser hike in Tahoe this year, which, Tyler, thank you for donating.
Yeah.
I was able to literally spend 8-9 days in the woods with some dudes that were doing some stuff much bigger than me. And, obviously you have a little bit of time to talk. And one of the things that I took away from that, one, there was many, but a lot of these guys, I looked at them as doing things much bigger than me. Okay. And it's hard when you're in those types of settings, like you compare your business to somebody else's business. And all of these guys, I shouldn't say all, but most, were doing stuff that I considered bigger. Like, hey, we're buying a 300 unit apartment deal, or, hey, we're doing this. We just bought 30,000 square feet of storage, or whatever it was. Hey, we're developing 112 lots in Texas. Like, that's a little bit different. None of them were wholesalers and flippers. And to me, I was like, hey, dummy, you're sitting there trying to flip and wholesale, which is great money. Don't get me wrong. It's a season of your investing journey, or it could be. But these guys were doing things way bigger. They were all doing stuff that wasn't flipping houses and wholesaling. So I took that away. The other thing was what you just said about the pension and whatnot. Like, where the jurisdiction I may or may not work for, we'll just call it a jurisdiction near me, right, is going through a pretty big political fight for something that is just an absolute slap in the face to the people that do the job. And it just is proof. And one of the things that I always say is, like, people always say real estate's risky, flipping houses is risky. And don't get me wrong, there is a definite risky way to do it. However, I am a firm believer that it's way riskier to put all of your financial well-being and just your family's well-being in the hands of politicians who are going to use you as nothing more than a pawn in their political game. And whenever there's a grant awarded or a funeral to be at, they'll sit there like little puppets to look like they care, but their actions clearly dictate that they don't give a shit about you. So the best thing you can do is take this information and put it into action so that you can set yourself up for some sort of security. Because if you're banking on them to do what's right for you and your family, you might as well shit in your hands and clap, because that's what you're going to get.
100%.
So
That's all I got to say about that.
For once, I'm the one who's not cussing on here. That's a rarity.
Sorry, it is Sunday. We should probably tone this down.
Now, you just got back from church too, if I remember correctly.
I know, right? Maybe I better go back.
I like the point you're making. So, like, the people who are listening, like, even if it's a small move or a big move, like, I had a goal when I was in my 30s. I wanted to reach a certain net value, and I reached that goal when I was mid 30s. And then after that, even to this day, like, I'm not as aggressive as I used to be trying to acquire assets, because now I know what my income is going to be for the rest of my life, and it's just going to grow from there. If something happens to me at work or in life, my wife's taken care of, my family's taken care of, my sister and my brother, they're taken care of because I'll have enough assets to go around to where they're all like comfortable for the rest of my life. So to Mike's point, like there is a lot of guys who see things through rose-colored glasses and like, oh, nothing was ever going to happen to me. Nothing's gonna, bad's going to happen. Like one
'Cause you
injury,
were 22 and you didn't
yeah,
know
one
any
injury
different.
is one injury away from being retired and having to find a new career or a new job. So don't put all your eggs in one basket, like Mike was saying. Don't shit in your hand and clap. And I'm going to use that one for later on. I'm saving that one. But in the show notes, I made the joke that maybe we should start our own mastermind, and I like the idea of it, but that's just the idea. It'd be time consuming. And Mike mentioned, why don't you host it at your lighthouse? So for those who don't know, I was bidding on a lighthouse to buy about 2 months ago, and I didn't win the bid. It was a government auction. I was going to try to buy a fire plug lighthouse in the middle of the bay, and just I don't know if it was a dick measuring contest or something turned into an Airbnb or just something for fun, but I didn't win the bid.
You could have stored all your little Japanese import excavators there.
Yeah, they could just dock it there instead of having to bring it all the way to Baltimore.
But yeah, man, it's interesting. Like the biggest thing is like, just like I said a little bit ago, the guy that took action and invested some of that money. I don't know where he got the money. He could have saved it. You can use a line of credit. Like right now, most people have some equity in their house that's basically just trapped there. Like you can redeploy that. And even if you're not the one flipping or wholesaling, there's ways you can get in this game and do something to help yourself. And one of the questions I always ask people, like whenever they ask about getting into real estate or doing something, it's like, it's kind of a rhetorical question, but how many sources of income do you have? And if you're like, well, I have my job, I work overtime, that right there should be your wake up call that like, do something, whatever that something is, start.
And once you learn it, you have it for life. Like Mike, once you learn how to flip or lend or Tyler,
Sure.
invest long distance, like you have that knowledge skill set for life.
Yeah.
So even if it's like, there's a lot of moving parts in real estate. There's a whole lot, like there's
Absolutely.
so many assets and revenues and avenues you can go down to learn about this stuff. But if you learn one or two of them and you focus on that, then you are putting yourself in a better position than 99% of the population out there.
You become
100%.
resourceful. Right.
Yeah. And it's not sexy. Nobody wants to learn financial education, but the benefits of it are what everybody finds sexy, right? That's the thing. It's like nobody wants to go read some books on this, but they like to see those people's like lifestyle and stuff like this. It was interesting too. I saw Neil, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Mike. Neil K. That's all I can. But he showed this thing of like an entrepreneur's journey, right? Like everybody's like, oh, how's that real estate thing? How's that real estate thing going? And then you see this huge hockey stick, and at the top it says, everybody that is in his circle saying, oh, we always knew you would do it. We're so proud of you. And it's like, but nobody wants to put that initial time in. I mean, and that's the not fun part about this business. I honestly, though, it's funny. I've always been a big reader and an education nerd, not formalized education, just outside on my own. And it's huge. And I think if a lot of people would just educate themselves a little bit, which is why we do all of this, and they broaden their horizons, there's so many more options that you can give yourself and not put your family in a bad spot. Like we've been talking about lending, all of us have, 457s or 401ks for our individual departments. If you can figure out a way to, when you retire, convert that into a self-directed 401k and maybe, do some different income streams with that, that's huge. I've been doing that with my solo 401k for my business. And that's going to be another stream of income. Now, obviously I can't draw off of that now, but I'm just building it for when I can use it. So, Aaron, I know you were joking about starting the mastermind, but I do think that's a huge part of a lot. Like I know for me, it put me in a room with people who thought and did bigger things than I did. And my price of admission was expensive at first, but now looking back on it, it was the cheapest thing I've ever could have done. And Mike's thing too is kind of what I'm leaning towards more recently, like where he went out and did something that I thought was super cool, which is why I donated. I really believed in what it's Eric Upchurch, right? Where is it?
Yeah, Eric.
I'm like, dude, this is a good cause. I'd absolutely donate. But Mike went in there with the best of intentions of doing it for this cause, and then he unknowingly, it sounds like, put himself in an area where, holy crap, these guys are doing a lot of things bigger than me. And I would ask Mike, this is what happens with me. once I hear people talk like that, I can knock it out of my head. I'm like, I can do this. I know I can do this. I just got to figure out how to do it because they did it too. And I'm guessing that's led to a lot of the actions that you've taken since you've got back is you saw people who do it, you know you can do it, and you're leaning fully into it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's whenever it's kind of like that rubber band. Like once it's been stretched, it doesn't ever go back to that like same size. Like when you hear guys talking about developing 100-unit subdivision and all the trials and tribulations, and the one guy is legitimately looking to buy a jet. Like, so whether you think a jet is cool or not, like if you don't think it's cool, that's serious. Like you might want to go see somebody about that. But like think about the person and the amount of growth and stuff they have to go through to be able to be the person that can afford something like that. So they just have a wealth of knowledge. And this guy's doing a syndication for $30 million. Like, what does that look like? That sounds very, $30 million. He's doing a syndication. Well, there's so many micro steps in that journey. Like that, just when you had that conversation, just a one-off here, a one-off there, you're just like, hey man, like, wait a second. He's kind of doing something that I can't do right now, but like with a couple degrees of change, I might be able to do something similar. So yeah, I totally did not go into it for that reason, but that was definitely one of the byproducts of that adventure or experience. So,
And
so
that's
if some of these neighborhood thoughts can sell bathwater and feet pictures and make $100,000 a year, people listening to this can actually find something to do, take action, and make a couple $100 extra a month or a couple $1,000 extra a year to put yourself in a better position and learn a new skill set, whether it be networking with the right people or getting in the right mentality of just changing what your thought process is. If I can do that, not like, I'm not going to waste my time. Like, just put a little bit of effort into this stuff. What are you guys doing? Let's talk about. We got like 10 minutes left. So, what are you guys doing now for the next incoming? What are you guys doing actionable wise for the next projects?
I am committed. Today is the 30th. I just paid the IRS on Friday. I know I'm a little late. And it friggin' pisses me off so bad that I'm going to buy a ton of rental properties in the next 60 days. I have to do it. It irritates the crap out of me. The thought of giving them any more money next year, it does piss me off. And I'm not going to lie. So I don't care if they're listening, if they ever hear about this. I am going to do whatever I can in the next 60 days to legally not pay what I just paid the last 2 years because I am a fool. And to this point, I have around a bunch of people who could have helped me not pay that much in taxes. And I was lazy. I didn't do it. And I'm extremely upset in case you can't tell. And it's 100% my fault. I should have done the actions earlier last year and this year to avoid what I just did. And my accountant told me we need to talk. And I'm like, dude, I know what he's going to say because it's stupid. I just wasted money. So for the next 60 days, 100% focus on buying rental properties, that cash flow, whether that be storage or hopefully it's storage or single family. I need to do it because it's a waste of money. I literally pissed money down the drain. So that's what I'm
short term or long term. What are you looking for?
Me long term because short term to me is a whole process I have to set up. I have to get all that dialed in, and in 60 days, I don't think I would have a good one. Long term, I already have the pieces in play, so I'm just going to plug the new properties into that and go from there.
Cool, Mike. What about you? What's your actual items the next coming week?
Everybody down at Tent City, Tyler, thanks you for their new phones.
That's what's asked my ass.
So I am dialed in or I should say I'm getting like my mission for the remainder of 2022 is basically to refine our operations. Obviously, we've talked about how we purchase some storage, and most of them are operational value add, some of them physical value add. We've done most of the physical. Right now, we're just really figuring out by trial and error, and we're leaning on some folks that we know and some groups that I've joined since about how to improve those operations. So like got the asset now, like let's get it firing on all cylinders. That's what a lot of this, Rain Man looking crap behind me is on the whiteboard, is just figuring it out. How do I get it from like, we've increased income at the one location 74% since we purchased it. So that's taken a lot of work day in, day out, and just figuring out how to do that. has been what I've been focused on. So not necessarily acquiring. However, like to Tyler's point, I wish I would have spent as much time learning on how to keep more of what I made instead of just focusing on how to make more as I went through my real estate journey. But I just signed paperwork for something that I can deduct on my Section 179 purchase. So I just bought a bunch of portable storage units that are going to be on this year's tax bill. So adding more inventory or square footage to one of our sites while enjoying some of the tax benefits to offset some of the flipping income. So yeah, just kind of figuring that out and trying to keep level up. I'm getting ready to go to the LFG mastermind for the second time in about a week. And there's some guys in there, or I would say most of the guys in there are just doing stuff that I'm looking to do. Most of it is a lot bigger than what I'm accustomed to. And I'm just, I want to get around the people that make me feel really stupid and like that I should sit in the corner and drink a Diet Coke and not talk to anybody because they're all talking about stuff that I'm like, holy crap, but that's the room I need to be in to get where I want to
be the sponge.
Yeah.
What about you, Aaron?
What about me? Anybody who's following, I want to do some development in the state that I'm looking to retire in, and I'm learning about their rules and regulations now. So
California?
Yeah, right. I don't want 54% of my income going to the state. I'll go somewhere else. I do love California, but I can't see myself living there. I got family there, and I'm like, I don't know how you guys maintain your head above the water with the amount of taxes that you pay.
Dude,
but no, that's why I'm looking at going somewhere that's they're not going to tax my pensions, lower output of financials altogether. But I'm looking at developing out there, and I'm trying to learn the systems. I'm setting myself up now so I have the knowledge for later on to do it. Development is not that hard. It's just getting the right numbers and right approval from the right people, from zoning and planning and everything else. So that's what I'm working on this week. Anybody who looked at the Facebook post, I posted wagons that were short-term rentals for sale. That's a cool little niche property. They just had the glamping, which is it's like camping, but a little more ritzy, where you're not actually roughing it. That was just in Colorado this past month. They had a bunch of ideas out there. So I'm looking at something like that, doing a little development area, digging out and creating a pond instead of buying waterfront property. I create waterfront property. I'm looking to see what goes into that. One of the guys in the group, his dad pushes dirt and they sell sand, which I found out is an entire market. And I was talking to him about how much it takes to create waterfront property versus buying it. And it sounds like it's actually cheaper to create your own waterfront property. So I'm just looking more into these things for future reference. I'm still working on the import-export stuff. I'm talking to 2 brokers this week to see what the numbers are and the finances look like on this side of the country. I know all the export fees and the boxing fees and the insurance fees are coming over from the ships from China and Japan. I just got to see what's going to cost me on this side. So that's it. It's just setting myself up. I lost two offers on properties that I was taking a swing at this week. And I got one more I'm going to put an offer on in a week. So we'll see what happens. Can't get on base if you don't swing, right?
No, absolutely. And I was just thinking, hey, like all 3 of us are here on a Sunday morning trying to make stuff happen. And that's what you do with the offers. It's just, we got to keep, dude, one step in front of the other, right? Even though the mountain's starting to get steeper right now, if we just keep doing daily actions, we'll hit all of our goals.
Can't lose if you don't quit.
Yep. That's what I was telling my daughter the other day. Just one foot in front of the other, man, no matter how bad it sucks, just keep doing it.
That's right.
Cool. It's an hour. So guys, thanks for hanging out with us. That is First Responder Financial Freedom. And we'll see you next week.
Later, guys.
Toodles.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.